First week in the vow series, the vow was this. Vow 1 was, I promise that God will be my first priority and my spouse will be my second priority. That week we talked about how that we get to the place where our emotional cup is full and no room for God in there, and how God has to clean the inside so that there can be room for the power of God and love. The second week, Pastor Casey rocked the house with her message. It was so good. Vow 2 was, I promise I will always pursue my two. I will pursue my two. Say to somebody, say, I will pursue my two. Yeah, it's awesome. And there was a lot of great feedback, especially the guys were saying like, thank you, Casey, for saying that. I needed a woman to say that. It was so good. It was so good. It's so good. This week is vow number 3 in the vow series. I promise our marriage will be about we and not about me. Say it with me. We, not me. Oh, that's good. Like, we, not me. I'm not getting a lot of, I'm not feeling this, okay? I'm not getting a lot of participation. Let's hear like, we, not me. We, not me. We, not me. We, not me. Okay, you guys got it. You guys got it. This week you can go like, we, not me. We, not me. You got it. Now, I have in my little sticky fingers today a great expression of me, not we. So I'm going to talk today about we, not me, but I want to first let you know what me, not we looks like as if you didn't know. So here is the laws for women, okay? Ladies, see if we got this right, okay? See if we got this right. Number 1, the laws for women. Law number 1, the female is never wrong. Law number 2, if the female is wrong, it is because of flagrant misunderstanding, which is a direct result of something the male did or said wrong. Yeah? Yeah, that's me, not we. Okay, go. Law number 3, the female can change her mind at any given point in time. Number 4, the male must never change his mind without express written consent from the female. Number 5, the female has every right to be angry or upset at any time. Number 6, the male must remain calm at all times unless the female wants him to be angry or upset. Unless she wants him, why aren't you upset? That's me, not we, right? Okay, so I'm just making sure you know what me, not we looks like before we talk about we, not me. Number 7, any attempt to document these rules could result in bodily harm to the male. All right, laws for men, okay? Guys, can you say, ugh? Oh, got one guy, okay. That was more like a moan, not a grunt. Let's hear some grunts. Like, ladies, can these guys grunt? Let's hear a big grunt, guys. Okay, grunt, growl, whatever you want to do. All right, so, laws for men. Learn to work the toilet seat. You're a big girl. If it's up, just put it down. Law number 2. I know it did. Crying is always illegal blackmail. Number 3. Yes or no are perfectly acceptable answers to almost any question. Laws for men. Oh, I like this one. Come to us with a problem only if you want help solving it. That's what we do. Is that me, not we, or we, not me? That's a little me, not we. How about this one? A headache that lasts 17 months is a problem. See a doctor. I didn't make up the rules. Just reporting them. Okay, so now number 6 for men. Whenever possible, please say whatever you have to say during commercials. You like that one already? You're good with that one. It's good. You're good like that one. I'm so glad your wife came to the second service, you know. Number 7, if it itches, it will be scratched. That's what we do. If it itches, it will be scratched. That's what we do. Can I get an amen? Amen. That's a man. Okay. Now that we got the me, not we. Y'all want to do the rap again? Okay, we're good with the rap. You're good. You want to do it again? Alyssa, you don't want to do the rap again? Okay, so let's talk about we, not me. Genesis 2:24. This is why a man leaves his father and mother and is united to his wife. We, not me. And they become one flesh. Now, one flesh has a lot more to do than physically. The Hebrew word for united in this passage, original Hebrew word, is echad. Echad. Can anybody do that? Echad. It's like you're hawking up something, okay? Echad. It means to be united or completely joined as one. Okay. The image of this Hebrew word is this. It cannot be separated without breaking the original pieces. Cannot be separated without breaking the original pieces. Let's read the rest of this passage. So it says it in Genesis 2:24. Then the Bible repeats itself in Matthew 19. And actually, this whole thing about leave and then be united, it occurs 3 times in the Bible. Genesis, and then in Matthew, and then again in Ephesians. Matthew 19. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. Pastor Casey taught us last week that the only difference between united and untied is where you put the I. Before the cross, the T, or after it. Verse 6. So they are no longer 2, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate or put asunder, is the old King James version of this. Jesus, drawing back from Genesis 2:24, placing it in context of the gospel in the book of Matthew, and says, this is God's original design. This is God's original design. We know in our world, there is a whole other version of marriage being crafted in our world. But I'll tell you this. No matter where you sit today, someone who's single, widowed, married again, marriage on the mountaintop or marriage on the rocks. Our God is a redeemer of the heart. He's an empowerer of the soul. There is nothing broken that God cannot restore and repair. But most of us aren't willing to put ourselves on the master's table. In his hands, restoration is always the powerful option that he has to make us to be reborn in our ability to be united with someone, to be united with someone, to be united. So, marriage is not a covenant, is not a contract, but it's a covenant. Marriage is not a contract, it's a covenant. What's a contract? Anybody here ever signed a contract? Yeah, signed a contract. A contract is based on mutual distrust. Based on mutual distrust. It's, if you do this, then that gives me the right to do this. It's a contract. You buy a house, you buy a car, you sign an apartment lease. Anybody ever signed an apartment lease? You ever tried to get out of that lease? You can leave the apartment, but you living in the apartment has nothing to do with your legal requirement to pay. I don't care who lives in that apartment. You signed up to pay. It's based on mutual distrust. It protects people. The point here is this: it protects me from your wrongdoing. I'm only in as far as you're in. I heard a joke one time about Congress. There was the chairman of some committee in Congress. They were waiting on him to come to a meeting. It was an important meeting, and he held it up. They said, "What's he doing?" And somebody said, "I think he's up in Congress. He's trying to get his wedding vows with a with a line item veto." With a line item veto. It's not about the contract. It's so different than that. When we think about a covenant is based on mutual submission. And the word that may even drive it home better for us today, when we think about submission, is mutual surrender. And truly, there's never trust without surrender. Because I'm surrendering something. I'm placing myself at risk. I'm taking on a liability. The word covenant in Hebrew is barith. It means to cut something. If you're going to take one thing and join it to something else, something's got to be cut. And this idea of cutting, and not just cutting something inanimate, but cutting something and having the idea that blood flows. It's the idea that when they took an Old Testament covenant, they couldn't write something down. There was no courthouse to record something in. They made a public spectacle of the covenant. And covenants weren't just in marriage. Covenants were for anything. If I'm going to make this deal with someone, and I'm going to make a vow to God, like, in the idea we say, I swear. That's invoking a divine covenant when you swear. That's where that comes from. It's taken on like this earthly meaning, but originally it was, I swear by God. I'm taking a holy vow here in this moment. And what they would do is they were a Hebrew culture that had sacrifices to God, where they would devote one of their animals to God, livestock. And of course, it cost them something because they traded everything in livestock. In fact, an animal sacrifice was a financial offering because of what it meant for their inventory. Everybody had livestock. So they would do this offering, and the offering would be a burnt offering to God. But before the offering happened, the animal, the bull or whatever it was cut up in pieces. And they would take turns walking through the cut, bleeding pieces. And I swear before God, if I do not keep my vow to you today, I swear this vow. If I do not keep this vow today, may God do to me what was done to this sacrifice. I sacrifice myself to this vow. A permanent change unable to be revoked. And then the other person would walk through, say the same thing. A cutting, a binding agreement, a blood covenant. Ephesians 5:21 says it this way: submit to one another out of reverence for Christ. Surrender to one another out of reverence for Christ. It's about being all in. And if someone doesn't keep their vow, it's very costly to the other person. Anybody ever been there? Anybody ever been there? It's very costly because you were there with someone who was all in. It's richer or sickness or until death do we. And our wedding videos are funny. Like you look back sometimes and and there's funny ones where like the guy starts swaying and he falls out and it takes out the bridesmaid and takes out the preacher and they're falling, they're upside down, It's really funny to watch your wedding video with your children. Now, that's funny. So we were doing that one time, and Hannah and Graham were watching it with us, and they get a kick out of their dramatic dad. You know, I was raised in a family of divorce. And so, like, I think of myself, like, since I was a teenager and I saw the pain of that in my home, I'm thinking, like, dear Jesus, dear Jesus, dear Jesus, never let me exact this pain. God, let me be different than this because I know the pain it caused me. And so, out of the blue, out of my dramatic self, there's a line in the wedding ceremony that says, the traditional ceremony that says, I believe with all my heart that this is forever. I believe with all my heart that this is forever. And we knew that was part of the vows we were taking, Melanie and I. Of course, Melanie says hers, you know, very perfectly, very distinctly, right on point, exactly right, dignified. And mine comes out like this. I believe with all my heart that this is forever. I don't know if there was a chuckle in the congregation that day or not. The kids laughed so hard at us. I heard of a couple who was going through the line in the grocery store. Older couple, gray hair, hand in hand, going through the line in the grocery store. The cashier hears them talking about their upcoming 50th wedding anniversary. Oh, and her heart's so warmed. And off the top of her head, the young girl, she's 18, 19 years old, and she says, wow. She says, wow. I can't imagine being married to the same man for 50 years. And she says it happily. I can't imagine being married to the same man for 50 years. She does not know what she just said to this woman, this 50-year anniversary woman. She does not know the roads this woman has traveled. You know what the woman says back on her cane? She just looks up and quips and says, well, darling, I don't suggest you ever get married until you can imagine being married to that man for 50 years. 50 years. And so marriage isn't 50-50, is it? Not 50-50. That's a distrusting contract. A covenant, my grandma used to say it this way, David, it's 100. It's 100%. And don't you ever dare marry somebody who's not 100%. And marriage isn't dividing everything in half. It's giving it all you've got. Giving it all you've got. And so let's talk about two things that are always present in a marriage covenant based on mutual submission. Number one, mutual surrendering. Mutual surrendering. Now, don't miss the word mutual in this, right? Don't miss the word mutual in this. Can you do enough submitting and surrendering for the other person? Do you try to do their part too sometimes? Yeah, you do. Usually there's one person trying to do their part and some of the other person's part. And sometimes, honestly, we train the other partner to not do by us overdoing. When you make up for what they don't do, sometimes you're training them to never do. But after that, Ephesians 5:21, the very next verse is Ephesians 5:22. Okay? And it says this, wives, submit yourselves, surrender yourselves in a marriage covenant based on mutual submission. Wives, surrender yourselves to your own husbands as unto the Lord. To your own husbands as unto the Lord. Remember, the vow is a vow to God that creates a relationship with a man or a woman. As unto the Lord. Submitting as unto the Lord, like a submit to him as if it was, I'm submitting to the Lord. Because it is to the Lord, not to him. Ephesians 5:25 is the passage that speaks to men. Mutual surrendering. Husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. The most amazing, romantic, sexy thing any man can ever do is give himself up. Give himself up. Give himself up. So that's got to be the mutual vision of the relationship. Two people mutually surrendering to one another. Because if we have two visions, what do we get? Division. Two visions. Division. And so mutual surrendering is a lifetime of discovering and surrendering your most vulnerable self. Your most vulnerable self. Early in a relationship, you give trust. You give trust. You give trust. And sometimes trust erodes over time. You ever seen a beautiful statue? Like you can tell it used to be beautiful, but it's some Roman statue or some Greek statue. And then over time, the acid rain, the wind, the dust, the dirt just chips away at the marble on the outside, and the nose isn't really a nose anymore. It's kind of caved in. The ears aren't there, and it's kind of eroded away. It's this kind of melted form. And sometimes trust erodes like that, little by little by little by little by little by little by little. And the other partner surrenders less, surrenders less, surrenders less, surrenders less, surrenders less, surrenders less. And sometimes trust is broken like this, like a chain 500 links long. How many links have to break the chain? One. Sometimes trust erodes like that. In restoring trust, you have to go back to the vow. Was the vow to that person? Early on, you think you're trusting the person. Later on, you know you're trusting God. You know you're trusting God. Think about it. You're entrusting your life to a human being? I'm glad we do it when we're young sometimes because we don't know who people are. I'm entrusting myself to a human being? I better not entrust myself to a human being. When I trust a human being, it better be that I'm trusting God. It better be that I'm trusting God. Because in restoring trust, you realize how you should have trusted from the beginning. And who you should have trusted from the beginning is not that person, but God. And I can only trust you if I trust God more than I trust you. Because no one can hurt me more than God can heal me. No one can harm me more than God can help me. And if you trust based on what the other person does alone. Now, is it 100% proven trust? Yeah, it is 100% proven trust. Remember 100? But it also is 100% given trust. Trust is a 100% overlapping two-party street. And so I look at this. And I think, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? Here's two things. You might want to write these down. What if I want to try to restore trust? I want to really try to give trust. What is trust about? I want to surrender, right? Like, who's going to surrender? Wait on him to surrender. Wait on her to surrender. What can I do? You might want to write these down. Is there anything that you know in your heart you've been refusing to do? It doesn't matter if it's a marriage relationship or dating relationship. It can be anybody that you want to create trust with. Pray about it and ask God, how could you do the thing you've been refusing to do, not because of that person, not because they're so good or because they deserve it, but out of trust and honor and surrender to God. Trusting God. It has to be Spirit-led. Now, here's another thing you could do. When we don't have trust, we don't have vulnerability, okay? And we stop asking for anything, right? Because it's painful to ask. Isn't it painful to ask? When you don't have trust? It's painful to ask. And that's what the longer term, and even people trying to get back into a relationship when they've been single, there's where we struggle a lot of times because we don't make ourselves vulnerable because of what we've been through in the past. Is there something you want in the relationship but you're afraid to ask? And you're just hoping they figure it out? Is there something you want? But to ask it would make yourself very vulnerable to disappointment. could you do it? Not because the other person, you're sure that they would come through? Could you do it trusting that God will take care of you no matter what they do? Again, this has to be your life. It has to be, I would never sit down with you and tell you, oh, yeah, that, trust him in that. I would never sit down with you and say, oh, that, offer her that. I would never do that. But when you go before God, if something pierces your heart and say, I know I've been refusing that. I know I have been. If you have something in your heart saying, I know that I don't want to let them know what I really want. I want them to just do it. I don't want to be that vulnerable. I can only trust you if I trust God more than I trust you. There was a panel of women who got together and tried to figure out what kind of man was the best man, the most trustworthy man, the one that they should have. You know, they tried to get together like a panel of women. That's called any group of women in a bathroom, right? Panel of women together. You know, anywhere where they're gonna figure things out. They're gonna figure men out. And they got together, and they went through all the actors they thought they were the best, the athletes they thought the best, like the wealthiest ones, and the most godly, glorious, amazing man, the Bible-thumping guys, the guys who know the scripture, who love God. And they went through all these things to try to figure out, like, is Tim Tebow? Is it Tim Tebow? Is it Tim Tebow? Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? Who is it? And they came up with this one guy. It's a guy you all know. You've all heard of him, Mr. Potato Head. And they came up with him for 4 reasons. He's tan. He's cute. He knows the importance of accessorizing. And if he ever breaks your trust, you can rearrange his face. And so a marriage covenant is not a contract. It's based on mutual submission. In mutual submission, it's mutual surrendering, but it's also mutual serving. Mutual serving. If I get married, I'm signing up to serve somebody. I'm signing up to serve somebody. But I also heard of this. You know, a lot of people have been sick lately, right? Anybody been taken care of by somebody that just loves them when they're sick? You know, if you're single, the loneliest time you're ever single is when you're sick. It's tough for people. It's also really lonely if you're sick and nobody cares, even if you're married. If you're married and they don't care, that's worse, right? So I heard of this. This is the 5 stages of having a cold when you're in a marriage. First year, if you have a cold. Baby, darling, I'm so worried about that sniffle that you have. So I've called the paramedics to rush you over to the hospital and for a checkup and a week of rest. I know you don't like hospital food, so I'm having the meals brought in for you. Second year of having a cold. Sweetheart, I don't like the sound of that cough. I've arranged Dr. Johnson to come over and make a house call. Let me tuck you into bed. Third year of having a cold. You look like you've got a fever. Why don't you drive yourself over to the pharmacy and get some medicine? I'll take care of the kids while you drive yourself to the pharmacy. How chivalrous are you, you know? Fourth year of having a cold. Look, be sensible. After you've fed and bathed the kids and washed the dishes, you really ought to go to bed. Be sensible. You ought to go to bed. Fifth year of having a cold. For Pete's sake, you have to cough so loud? I can't hear the television. Why don't you go in the other room while this show's on? Woo-hoo. I think that's me, not we, right? That's me, not we. If possible, whatever you have to say, can you say it during commercials? I think that's a little me, not we. So 5 stages of having a cold in marriage. I've become enamored with a Jewish psychotherapist in her books, in her writings, in her work, and she practices in Manhattan in New York City. You can look her up. She says the things and talks about the things that nobody talks about. And that's the ones I love. Because a lot of the books, you go to the Christian bookstore and like the books are The books are amazing, but they generally have a lot of the same things in them. I like to find new and different things. And so her name is Esther Perel. And she has this amazing accent, and you listen, and her words are so deep and profound because she's just been there with people in the thick of the worst things. And she has an amazing ability to talk about the things nobody talks about. And so she says it this way. So what's the desire? So what sustains desire? Like the desire to be together, the desire to love one another, the desire to surrender, the desire to serve, the desire for intimacy. So what sustains desire? And why is it so difficult? At the heart of sustaining desire in a committed relationship, I think, is the reconciliation of two fundamental human needs: security and adventure. Security looks like this. Did you pay that bill? Security looks like this. What are we having for dinner? Security looks like this. Did you pick the kids up? Security looks like those kind of things. Adventure looks like this. Ooh, what did you surprise me with? What's in this package? Let me shake it. Adventure looks like this. Don't plan anything this weekend. I've got plans for you. Adventure looks like this. When she says, I know we've been married a long time, but he can still surprise me. She knows what I want. She knows what I need. She's exciting. She makes sure she is. You know, we do that. And usually a lot of arguments are about whether somebody wants security or adventure at the moment, right? Like this. What did you do with your paycheck? What happened to the bank account? Security. Adventure. He responds or she responds with adventure and says, well, I took you out of town last weekend on a surprise. What do you think happened to the money? Right? Argument about those things. There's a couple that I've known. They told me this story. They were in our church years ago. And what do people do when they get they come to church and they get their marriage settled and the blessings of God, and they start to work together and cooperate and communicate, and they got their house. They had some more children and they wanted to expand their house for more room for more kids, and they're going to do what city people do: move to the country, have some peace and quiet. If somebody ask those guys to just be quiet out there, please, for me. All right. I want to move to the country, right? And so they're out there, they're looking for houses, and they're trying to meet the real estate agent. And they go in, and what do you need when you go out in the country and you're going to look for a house? You're going to go 5 miles to this one, 12 miles over to that one, 20 miles to this one. What do you need? Gas. You need gas. And so they're trucking and they're going. And she leans over and goes, gas is getting kind of low. We just passed a station. Security, right? And what does he say? I know exactly what I'm doing. And he is going to wow her with getting her the house and doing it all and meeting the real estate agent and getting there and taking care of business and having her excited because she can see the next one. I'm so excited. Let's go see the next one. I don't want to stop for gas. Let's see the next one. So they go and they make it through everything, and they get down low. And then there's a gas station. And she sees it, and the car is sputtering. Like, you know how a car's running out of gas, it'll sputter a little bit, and he cranks it again, he pops the clutch, and he gets some more gas, and he can go. But there's a little hill, because you turn up into the driveway of the gas station out in the country on the corner, and he turns up on the hill, and the little hill goes like this. The car gets right to the crest of the hill and stops, and a second goes by, and it starts heading back down. And they're stopped. And he starts heading back down, moving, and puts on the brakes. And he stops right in front of the gas pump. He has had a gas station realty finding the house adventure. And he looks over at her thinking like, I'm going to get the biggest, sexy, exciting kiss in the world. It's so excited. I know she's excited about this because I did it. And her hair is standing on edge, fuming with anger. Her side of the window is like all fogged up. She's crazy angry. They did not buy a house that day. They didn't buy a house that day. And so you think about this. These needs, mutually serving. Serve the need for security. But you know what you better also do? Serve the need for adventure. Serve the need for adventure. Few people ever stray because, well, it was just so secure. Many people stray because there was no more adventure. Because there was no more adventure. And some people, their hearts grow cold because there was no security. Serve one another. Serve one another. Some people say, I've talked to people over the years many times, and they'll say things like this. It's like we're like literally quoting a soap opera in my marriage counseling office. And they say things like this. I just don't feel love anymore. I don't feel what I used to feel. I'm not happy. I don't feel it. I don't feel it. I don't feel it. You know that feelings don't lead faith. Feelings don't lead commitment. Commitment leads feelings. Commitment is the only thing that can lead feelings. Well, I don't know if we have a future. I just don't feel anything anymore. Getting divorced because you ran out of love is like selling the car because you ran out of gas. Selling the car because you ran out of gas. I'm glad that couple didn't sell the car that day. Romans 12:10 says it this way. Be tenderly affectionate to one another. Be tenderly affectionate to one another. Outdo one another. Outdo one another in showing honor. Can you have a little competition this week? You might not even be married. You're going to find, who can I have a competition with this week? Outdo somebody in serving. Outdo somebody in serving. Because here's the truth. If you're in a relationship with somebody, you know what would serve them. You know it, right? You know. There is no chance of not knowing. You know. And you know what would serve one another. But here's the task. Can we outdo one another in serving? It's all good. It's all good. Our next church building will have a backstage and a curtain. You guys just start us up. Just start us up, guys. Just start us up. Just start us up. But outdo one another in serving. Do I have any takers today on the outdo challenge? I want to outdo my wife in serving. I want to outdo my husband in serving. First service, I asked for hands, and this one husband over here was scratching his head. I said, are you scratching or are you raising your hand? Any takers today? I want to outdo him. I want to outdo her. The outdo challenge, no, you didn't do that for me. I'm going to do more than you. I'm going to do more than you. From today till next Sunday, the outdo challenge. You know what would serve him. You know what would serve her. You know what would serve her. Outdo one another. Would you guys stand with me as we close today? I feel the presence of the Lord here, you guys. It was the first or second wedding ceremony I ever performed. Well, it had to have been the second one. The first wedding ceremony I ever performed was for my 83-year-old grandfather marrying his 82-year-old bride after my grandmother died. So it had to have been the second one because that was an experience. But I remember in that ceremony, towards the end, when you're completing the vows, and I was supposed to do the pastor's prayer over the couple. this is what came into my mind, and I've said it in every ceremony since. God, we've done what we can do. We've made human commitments. We've said human words. And now, God, I ask you to be the one who does something in their souls, in their spirits that can't be done by me or even by them themselves, God. And I pray this prayer. God, I pray you would reach into his heart and with the hand of Jesus, the nail-scarred hand of Jesus, take out a portion of the pure human soul you made when you made him. You don't marry a body. Bodies wither away and are gone sometimes. You're marrying a pure human soul that God created if you get married. You're not even marrying a personality because personalities change. You're not marrying security because security changes. You're not marrying adventure because who knows? You're marrying a pure human soul. And God, would you make them a partner? God, would you make them united? If you're here with your spouse today, grab their hand. God, would you take a portion of their pure human soul, I say, of his, and take it and place it in her deepest place in her heart. And I say, God, in the place that you take and place his soul, would you take out of that same place her soul and take a portion of the pure human soul that you made when you made her and place it back into that spot that his soul was removed from. Make them one flesh, God. Make them one flesh. And God, could our mutual surrendering, God, be based on trusting you? Not just in marriage, God, but towards you. God, could our mutual serving, God, see, these things aren't marriage principles, they are Christian principles. God, could our mutual serving, God, be based on not serving him or her, God, but be served by serving you?